Hello and welcome to Flory Models. Today I'm going to talk to you about our wash. Now our wash has been around now for the last 20 years, but we haven't done a really up-to-date video about how to use it, and certain things have changed. Alright, so mainly the biggest changes is usage and how to use it. Also we have now got the new thick weathering wash that's come along with it. So what you've got now is a situation, you have two washes. You've got the old classic one with the red label, which is the one we're using today, and we've got the newer thick one. Now these are both dark dirt colours. The colour is exactly the same, but a lot of people ask me, when do you use which type of wash? When do you use the wash and when do you use the thick stuff? Really simple. The wash is, as it implies, is literally a wash. It's very thin, it's very watery, and it flows. So on a model and things like that, you want capillary action. You want it to flow into the panel lines, into that surface detail, and basically zip around all those little details. The thick wash is more akin to toothpaste. So it's very, very thick. So it's got no real capillary action. Where you put the thick wash is where it will stay. It's a lot stronger, it's a lot tougher. So ideally, if you're using it on diorama bases, if you're using it on vehicles, on armour, things like that, the bits where you don't want the wash to zip off and go on its own, that's when you want to use a thick one. Obviously the thick one takes a lot more to get it off as well, which is great again for dioramas and bases and obviously on armour and vehicles, whereas obviously the wash is really, really simple to get rid of it once you've put it down and leave it into recesses and panels, or you can go for a more weathered one. So today we're just going to be using the normal wash. So the wash comes in a 50ml bottle. It's clay based, it's made with water. All right, so literally it comes off really well. The whole idea of this is you let it totally dry, and then literally once it's completely dry you can then remove it and take away as much or as little as you like. It's totally safe over any type of finish, so it doesn't matter if it's an acrylic, if it's an enamel, if it's a lacquer, an oil, whatever it is, as long as the surface is completely dry, so i.e. your surface of your model is completely dry, then you can come in and you can use this stuff straight over the top and you don't have any worries at all. So speaking of the surface, down in here we've got a very nice HK Models 148 scale B25. So with this it's got a nice satin smooth finish, so it's somewhere in between. The wash works particularly well over this type of finish, so it's a nice satin finish, so it'll go down really well, but it's equally as well over a gloss surface. So if you just want pure panel lines, recess details, riveting, things like that, if you want those to show and no other things, you want to give it a gloss coat first. Because it's gloss, it's really slippery and it wipes off really easily. The more texture you introduce by going through to sort of satins or you know, matte finishes, means it's going to get caught up in the texture. Think of putting it over things like a sanding stick. If it's a nice polishing stick, there's hardly any bite to it, it's easy to wipe away. But if you've got a medium or coarse sanders, it will get stuck in that texture and it can't lift away. Exactly the same on your model. So again, if you just want a pin type wash, gloss coat it. If you want to go for a naturally weathered, a little bit of grime but generally really clean, then a satin. If you want to use this over sort of something really heavily weathered, something else like that, then obviously you want to go over a matte or a dead flat finish. Just remember, every time you go for a rougher finish, more of the wash will be left behind. So on a gloss finish, you'll get 100% of it you can wash away. Come along with a soft brush, warm water, you can take 100% of this off. If you're coming on to satin finishes, you'll probably get 90% off. If you're using it over a flat finish or a matte finish, especially dead flat with lots of texture, you're probably only going to get around about 75% off, which is great if you want it to look really grimy and dirty. But if you're looking for clean, you don't want to be using it over a matte finish. You want to be making sure you're going over a gloss or a satin finish. So in our case, we've got like a satin finish down in here, somewhere in between. There is plenty, as you can probably see, lovely recess details on this. We've got paneling, we've obviously got panel lines, we've got riveting detail and everything in between. So this wash should be really, really good at highlighting and making all of those pop. All right. So big thing to remember is the wash. Because it is literally clay and water, there's obviously a little bit of pigment in there for colour, and there's a couple of other very, very nice little products into this one which just make the capillary action flow well and make it last a long time and everything else like that. The thing is, if you've got an old brush that has had something like alcohol-based thinners, IPA, things like that onto it, you will kill your wash. What happens is it will go gritty because all the particles will stick to the alcohol. IPA and this stuff do not get on at all. All right, so make sure you have a dedicated brush for using on this stuff, because many times people have come to me over the years now and said, what's wrong with my wash? And then we found out perhaps you've cleaned your brush in some alcohol. Even if it's dry on here, when you add it into the bottle, all right, you can actually then contaminate the bottle. If it does do that and it goes really gritty, just add a couple of drops of dishwater soap into this, give it a really good mix, and you should be able to reactivate it and it comes back to life. But I highly recommend a dedicated brush. I have one here, it's got a little bit of tape on the handle, this old brush. It's the only thing I use the wash for, all right? So I don't use it for painting or anything else, it's purely for the wash. The other one as well, do not put your brush in the bottle, purely because contamination and things like that. You're better off to decant some of this, obviously put it into a little jar, or as I tend to do, just bung it down on the cutting mat, all right? And then that way you can take exactly what you want, put it onto your model, and away you go. Don't pour back into the bottle because you might contaminate it again. So just think about this stuff as being very delicate, all right? Use it just for this and you'll be absolutely fine with it, all right? You'd have no problems at all. So what I'm going to do is, with that said, we're going to settle down, get some of the wash decanted into a little cup, and we're going to get a first coat onto the model. Okay, so it's time to put on the wash. So we've got some dark dirt wash. As I said before, it's just this one down in here, and I've put a little bit into a little glass jar here, all right, that we can take off. You could just put it down on your cutting mat, and often you'll see me in a lot of my videos, I actually do that, all right. The big thing to remember is your decals. Make sure you've sealed those down first. Highly recommended you put down, as we've done here, a satin coat, because what happens or can happen, if you imagine the actual wash itself can track along the actual panel line and go under the decal. If it's under the decal, you can't get rid of it, and then if it comes up on the underside, you can't wash it away. So seal your decals down with a clear coat, you can go for it. If you've got no real clear coat around it, you don't have to worry, but I would recommend putting down a clear coat first. So, wash going on. Simple as brush it on. It's not rocket science this, it literally is this simple. So all we're going to do is just brushing it around. You notice we're going in circular motions. That's just to wear it into the surface. So make sure it goes in all these riveting areas and all this stuff on here. So we're using a dark dirt on here, but at any point we could switch out the colours if you wanted to and go for a different colour or something else like that. But for our point, we're just going to come in here. So we're just going to put these down and we're literally going to overcoat absolutely everywhere. So again, if you get a clean spot, i.e. it doesn't go on very well, just wear it in, just keep going circles. If you do find you're on a really glossy surface and it doesn't like going on, so it's beading up, just add a couple of drops of dishwater soap into your mix, and then what will happen is that'll break the surface tension and it will make it flow a little bit better. The other thing you want to do is make sure you go absolutely everywhere. So don't come along like this and you miss an area like here, because what will happen is you will notice everywhere else will be slightly dirty, grimy. You can have a nice clean area. Great if you want it to look like it's after battle and it's perhaps had a touch up or something, but from our point of view we want everything to covered, so you make sure you go right the way in. So what we'll do, we'll continue around the entire of the model, including the underside. So we've got the underside under here just like this. This will get exactly the same on the underside, so it comes in and just rub it into the surface. All right, so again, really nice sort of shiny surface on here, so we're going around everywhere, going right into all the details and go right the way over. This stuff takes around about 20 minutes to dry to half an hour, depending obviously the ambient temperature of your room you're doing it in. You can leave this on indefinitely, so it doesn't matter. So what I tend to do is, and it might happen today, is that I'll put a coat of this on and then we'll leave it overnight to dry. Come down the next evening, wipe it off, you're good to go. But you could come down next week, next year, next decade. This is clay. Think of it like dirt on your car. So what happens is that once it's on your car, it just sits there on the surface, not doing anything until you clean it off. And this is exactly the same will happen here. Because it's water-based, you'll reactivate it, it will wipe away, depending on how much water you use on it. Well, and obviously how much rubbing you give it, like on your car, will depend on how much comes off of it. So it's exactly the same process we're doing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this a generous coat right the way over. Absolutely everywhere. And again, if you wanted to, you could use it on gear, you could use it on wheel wells, you could use it in anywhere you like on the model. It doesn't matter. All right, just make sure you got a nice even coat over absolutely everything. All right, so just make sure you go absolutely everywhere, in other words, and you'll be good to go. Again, if you don't want it to go anywhere, you've got a little bit of control over it, you can go through. One last word, if you wanted to and you were doing a big project, you can airbrush this. Go straight into your airbrush. In testing, we've gone down as 0.15 of a needle size. This stuff will still airbrush through it. Cleanup's really straightforward. Water and acrylic airbrush cleaner. Don't put lacquers near this because it doesn't like it, all right? But generally, it's really, really simple. Neat, straight into your airbrush, turn up your air pressure, and get spraying with it, and you can go over. The only reason I don't like doing it literally with this stuff is because it's very thin. It tends to go everywhere. So if you didn't want it to go inside, I don't know, the Bombay maybe, perhaps we're going to do something else with that, or a wheel well, or a cockpit, or an intake. You don't want it to go in there. You want those to be clean. Obviously, if you're airbrushing it on, you can't really tell where it's going. It will go everywhere. It'll cover everything instantly. With a brush, you've just got a little bit more control over where the said wash is actually going to end up and where it's going to go to. All right, so what I'm going to do is get the wash right over it. Once it's dried, after literally half an hour, we'll come back, we'll have a look, and we'll show you what we've got. Okay, so the wash has been dried for around about an hour and a half now, something else like that, and it's completely gone off. But underneath, if you have a look, you may still get the odd little wet spot. So you might notice just under here, a little bit wet. So you want to avoid those. The thing is, if you come in with your cloth, you absorb the moisture, clean off, and you have no dirty plane. All right, so just be careful. We've got a little bit down in here. The rest of it though, especially the top, is always dry. So a couple of options. First of all, if you wanted to, you could literally just wipe it off with a dry cloth. Now a dry cloth taking this off is not going to come off brilliantly, but with a little bit of wear and tear you can get it to come off. So if we just show you, all right, so literally if we just do this section just on this wingtip, all right, so dry cloth, this is just a good quality kitchen roll purely because the cheap ones fall apart. All right, so we just make a little pad and we start to have a rub with it. But as you can see, not a great deal's happening. Got a little bit coming off, as you can see. And again, you could take it off just like this, all right, and just completely have it as a dirty finish. The trouble is, because we put it on with a brush, it's not exactly uniform surface, all right? It's got brush marks into it. If you'd airbrush it on and had a perfectly neat coat, you could wear it down and just take off the wash like that, okay? Option 2 is an old sander. So you've got an old worn out fine sander. All right, we've got one just down in here. It's a very, very worn out old Flory Models one. All right, so again, you can come in and lightly sand it off, and you can take it down, and again, you can take it off just like this. You're going to get the wash coming off on here. If we just do this panel with it, you can see it comes off quite nicely, and it gives a nice worn look to your model still all the way in there. The easiest way though is to wet your cloth. So when I say wet the cloth, I've been doing this for years, all right, I'm a professional clearly. All right, so what we do is we turn over the cloth and you can lick it. Yes, lick it, all right. You wet the cloth, back of the hand, and what you're doing, you're moisturising it all. Of course, you could just have a little bit of water on the side and all the rest of it. Just a little bit of warm water, all right, which will just make this come off really easy. If you want to be a little bit more work with it, use cold water, because cold water won't reactivate the wash as easy as warm water would. Think of it like ketchup on your plate, your dinner plate. If you run it under the cold tap, it takes quite a bit to get it off. Warm water, straight off. Same thing with the clay, because all you're doing is rehydrating it, and obviously warm water rehydrates easier. Like on your car, cold water versus a steamer comes off a lot easier, if you know what I mean. So with this now just slightly damp, what we can do is we can just come along here and we can start to gently reactivate the wash. I mean, you can see it just slightly takes it off. All right, coming off quite slowly. So again, we add a little bit more moisture and we're just doing circular motions. And now it's coming off here by the bucket load. Got to be careful, I've got a little bit of photo etch there, which I don't really want to wreck. But now, if we just butt up to this photo etch, you can see how it reactivates it. All right, the wash is now just literally coming away very, very easily. All right, and we can just come back. And then obviously it's on here. So what we'll do, we'll flip it over. Re-moisten, just a little bit of clean, and we'll buff, and we can just buff it off just like this, and again just a bit around there, and there we go, we've taken it off, and as you can see, just literally panel lines now. All right, and this is what we're going to do with this one. So again, we just moisten it, rub it round in circles. So if you have missed anywhere, by doing the circle motion, what will happen is it will literally just rehydrate and start to come off. All right, And there it is, all coming off quite nicely. And again, you can see the rivets coming through now and all these different areas. And again, we'll just re-moisten. As I say, just pat it down so the moisture is across the entire cloth. And we can go along now and we can come along. And again, I'm going to leave a little bit down in there in that riveting over here to the wingtip. And we just get rid of it all nicely like that. And as you can see now, this wingtip's got all the riveting and we've got some wash in the panel line there, just like that. For argument's sake, we'll just do it over here on this one. It's obviously a lot easier to see it on the grey. So again, we're going to rehydrate. And we're just going to do that leading edge, trailing edge. All right, and we're just going to do circular motions. The great thing about doing circular motions, you drive it into any of the recesses that perhaps haven't got it. So again, we'll leave a little bit of wash just in there again. Flip this over onto a dry side and we'll buff up. And we want to leave a little bit of grime on here. So we're not going to be polishing it off totally and re-wetting the cloth because we want it to look like this and nice and grimy and dirty. And again, we'll just come into this one. So we'll reactivate the wash. And literally, that's all you do. You just wipe it off. And remember, you can actually have a really dirty cloth like this. And you can then obviously play with some streaking and some dirt. So we're leaving a little bit on and we're just streaking with it here. And that way we've got a nice dirty area going in as well. But again, if you wanted to, you could literally clean up the cloth, a little bit more moisture onto it, polish it in. If I just do a little area here in the middle, you can see the difference. So we say you've got nice clean and then more grubby and grimy. Obviously you want grubby and grimy. Another little trick, if you want grubby and grimy, get that wet cloth you had just there, work on another bit, get this all dirty, and then you can reapply just a thin coating literally right over your model to give that now a more grimy look. Again, just like that. All right, but from our point of view, you'll come in with other things afterwards and that. But if you just wanted it as a panel line wash, this is exactly what you're going to do. And again, exactly the same for the entire rest of the model. So you're literally just going to be coming in, wetting a cloth, and again, circular motion, just get it all going to start with. When you're doing big areas like this, you can see it comes off quite a bit, and then we flip the cloth over, and then obviously just get a clean bit. I just do up here, and there we go. It all comes off, leaving it just as a panel line wash right the way through. And that is literally it. Every now and again, bin it, get a clean bit, go again for a different area. You can work it in sections if you wanted to, or you can just do it as a whole right the way over. When you're finished though, just make sure if you're doing aircraft, you go direction of airflow. If you're doing armour vehicles, just go downwards. That way, if you have got any leftover clay just around, perhaps little streaks and that, they're going to look like it's weathering because they're going in the direction of airflow. Last up, overcoating. No problem at all. Just go right the way over it with your favourite sort of flat coat or a satin or gloss, whatever you want to do for your layer, just to finish it off right the way over it, and you'll be absolutely fine. The wash doesn't mind what it goes on, and it doesn't mind being overcoated. Just remember though, once it's overcoated, it is sealed in for good. Now the thing is, if you didn't like the colour, perhaps it's not working for you, you wanted to try a different one, obviously something like this, we may use a little bit of grime colour, which is a light earth colour. We could do that on the underside, for instance. We just put it straight over the top. You don't have to take off the original one, you can go right over it. Last up, if you want to mix the colours, you can mix all 9 colours in the range together to make up any particular shade or hue you like as well, so it's totally safe on that. So I'm going to get the rest of this off and we'll have a look at the results at the end. And there we go, that's the wash all completely taken off. All right. Totally dry now, totally handleable, and again, you could obviously, what we'll be doing later on is carrying on with some oils, but if you wanted to, you could put a sealer coat right over this, a satin, a matte, a gloss, whatever you like, to seal the wash down in place. And now you can just see, subtly, the panel line detail is a lot stronger now. So again, as you look round across, you can see it looking very nice indeed. And underneath here, quite grimy still. Some areas we've done a little bit cleaner, you can see just down in here than the did on the outer sides. But all that panel lining and detail now absolutely pops. And again, it's up to you how you like it. If you like it a little bit more sort of dramatic, the panel lines, you could do it in black wash if you wanted to. This one's the dark dirt, it's like a sepia colour, old oil, great. It works over anything. Greens, greys, you know, browns, sands, whatever. It works just very, very well. But if you did want to lighten it up, as we probably will do as we carry on with this one in a little bit more depth, we might might add other colours like grime to it, definitely perhaps on the underside around the wheels, because that's a great earthy colour, and obviously things like the environment around it would be flicking up onto the bomber, so something like that we might add to it as well. Remember, if you don't like it totally, warm water, soft brush, rinse all of this off, and you can just start again. If you're not happy with it though, I highly recommend just overcoat it. Just go straight over it with another colour. You don't have to remove it. That will show through. It will just layer on top and you can get the effect that you're after.